In the Agricultural Department, Secretary Tom Vilsack, the former governor, 40th governor of the state of Iowa, formally announced and seeking public comment on how to calculate or how to build tools, so methods for calculating the greenhouse gas footprint of agricultural production and conservation. This is in line with the 2008 Farm Bill that said that they should build such tools. This is in the Federal Register and is officially seeking public comment along these lines. The Defense Department, with Secretary Robert Gates, the former director of the CIA, released its January data for suicide. Among active personnel, there were 15 suicides, with 1 confirmed and 14 still under investigation. Among non-active personnel, reserves, there were 7 suicides, with 2 confirmed and 5 still under investigation. In the Education Department, Secretary Arne Duncan, the former Chicago Public Schools superintendent, announced that they will be hosting a youth summit, Voices in Action, a follow-up to the Voices in Action youth listening tour last summer. 400 youth, high school and middle school age, will be traveling to Washington for a day-long event at Howard University, where they will be able to talk to policymakers about what education means to them, what they need in education, and also be able to attend some workshops and participate in musical events. The agenda and opportunities to participate are online. The Commerce Department, with Secretary Gary Locke, the former governor, 21st governor of the state of Washington, will lead a delegation to the countries of Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Obviously, the point is to promote trade with those two countries. Qatar is an important country because it recently won the rights to host the 2022 World Cup and has pledged to spend $100 billion in infrastructure over the next 10 years. The United Arab Emirates is one of our largest partners in the Middle East and the second largest economy in the Middle East as a whole. This is the 3rd trade delegation for Secretary Gary Locke, and applications are online to participate in this trade delegation. The Energy Department, Secretary Stephen Chu, the only Nobel laureate in the cabinet, announced the Task Force on Asset Revitalization as part of the requirement of the Defense Department budget of 2011. This task force will look at what they're going to do with nuclear assets. I believe that the plan will be to submit a plan to Congress as to how these assets can be returned to the community or they can be cleaned up. Not really clear what the work of the task force will be other than that. The Health and Human Services Department, Secretary Catherine Sebelius, the 44th governor of the state of Kansas, levied the first fine in regards to violating the HIPAA Act. Now, most of you probably have visited the doctor and had to sign some document that they were apprising your rights of the HIPAA Act. Well, evidently, 41 patients for Signet Healthcare in Maryland wanted access to the records and were denied, and therefore Signet received the first violation, $4.3 million, for denying patients access to their own private records. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, the former and 21st governor of the state of Arizona, released no information today. Secretary Napolitano, along with fellow cabinet member Attorney General Eric Holder, were in attendance at the funeral of Jaime Zapata, the agent that was killed inside of Mexico. The agent that was shot, along with Jaime Zapata, Agent Avila, was at the funeral in a wheelchair at the graveside of the agent Jaime Zapata. Surprising that no information was released today about Homeland Security, considering the 4 Americans that were just announced that were killed by Somali pirates. Also, Secretary Napolitano may be quite lucky in that her trip to New Zealand was canceled, and shortly after she was due to arrive, there was a major. The Department of Interior Secretary Ken Salazar, the former senator from the state of Colorado, rode the sand rail in the dunes of the Imperial Desert outside of El Centro, California, promoting outdoor recreation, which is surprising since friends of mine have been riding in the desert and have claimed that no new rangers have been clamping down and closing areas previously that they were allowed to for 2011 and then shrinks down for 2012. Maybe I'll look at that more in depth. It does seem to be the largest expenditure in the budget is about $8 billion out of a total of 45 approximately for Section 8 housing. More on that later. The Department of Justice Attorney General Eric Holder, who actually represented the NFL as a private lawyer in the Michael Vick dogfighting case. He was in attendance with Secretary Janet Napolitano in Brownsville, Texas, for the agent that was slain in Mexico, Jaime Zapata. But the Department of Justice did announce today a settlement with the National Board of Medical Examiners, who had been sued by a Mr. Romberg for not accommodating his disability, dyslexia. The National Board of Medical Examiners said that it would make reasonable accommodations in the future for recognized disabilities. The Department of Labor, Secretary Hildy Solis, had no new announcements today. Secretary Hildy Solis was a former congressman from the state of California. I did look at some of their financial projections and reports. Interestingly enough, KPMG, who audited the department, found a lot of problems with the controls and procedures in the finances of the Department of Labor, including one interesting note where they were using the payroll system of the Department of Agriculture, which did cause some problems in terms of responsibility and reporting. Also, I was surprised by the size of the budget of the Department of Labor, some $240 billion for the year. The Department of State, Secretary Hillary Clinton, the former senator from the state of New York, announced today that tomorrow the Secretary will participate in an online dialogue with the youth of Egypt on their website masray.com, where she will be able to interact with the youth who were significant with using social media in the uprising and final toppling of Hosni Mubarak. There was a lot of dialogue on the CIA agent who killed some men in Pakistan, about diplomatic immunity, although interesting and relating to something that we might consider part of the movies, a la the Bourne incident, not quite as important or interesting as some of the other important announcements that came out of the State Department. The Department of Transportation, Secretary Ray LaHood, the former congressman from the state of Illinois, unveiled a major construction project in the state of Maryland. The project, which is estimated to cost upwards of $2.5 billion, with most of the money coming from state bonds and funding. The additional $500+ million that comes from the federal sources will aid in helping relieve congestion in the Maryland area. Department of Treasury, Secretary Timothy Geithner, who has worked for the Treasury Department or the Federal Reserve his whole career, had an announcement, actually a speech by Elizabeth Warren from the Consumer Protection Agency, the new agency created by recent law. I actually am a big fan of Elizabeth Warren, and she was speaking on the one-year anniversary of the CARD Act, which outlawed some practices that banks had been deploying in charging and how they charged and supposedly how they hid charges to some of their customers. And I think it's worth reading from her speech exactly some of the words that she said. We all have experienced the benefits of competition, but for the market system to serve fully the interest of consumers need to be able to understand the costs, benefits, and risks of alternative products and to be able to compare those products straight up. I think she is a great advocate for the consumer, but at the same time reminds us that competition in the free market, regulated fairly, is the best for all, including the banks whom we regulate. Of course, my favorite word is how she ended it. Thank you again for your time and your energy. We need you. Thank you, Elizabeth Warren. The Department of Veterans Affairs, Secretary Eric Shinseki, who before becoming Secretary of the Veterans Affairs Department was a four-star general in the Army and their Chief of Staff. They had no announcements, but yesterday he sat down with a reporter and talked about some of the things that the department was running into, including trying to help with homelessness among veterans, better health care, but also simple things like paying for tuition under the GI Bill. The department used to be able to handle 2,000 applications a day, and now can handle over 10,000. It used to take 59 days to process an application. Now it's down to 29, but of course the goal is 0. It seems like with an automated system it should be a lot quicker, and they're trying to improve those things. That's the roundup of the cabinet offices, of the 15 cabinet offices today. I found that some of the departments didn't have any news items. It actually took me a little bit longer to dig into things like finances and other things to provide some context to things that were going on. Until tomorrow,